have here is a dried Kydex CFR 3 frame and forks. I think it dates from around about 1997, and I bought it for a modest price because my son wants me to make him a retro build for him to ride around on, and I was up for that. So this frame was quite a good frame at the time, and quite leading edge in that it was one of the very early carbon fibre frames. The main tubes are carbon fibre, top tube, seat tube and down tube if I can find it. The forks are alloy, it's marked alloy T6000, as is the head tube. And going to the rear triangle, that's alloy 2. With a nice wishbone rear stay. Here's a detail of the frame badge telling you how it's constructed. A big frame, this one. My son's a tall lad. Alloy fork. Bit of a nasty scratch down the side. By modern standards, the tire clearance is pretty minimal. I reckon it'll take about 25 tops. Nice unfussy dropouts. Showing a bit of wear from use, but nothing outrageous. And the frame tubes are glued into alloy lugs. Quite a neat seat binder bolt arrangement, and it clamps the seat post that came with the bike very well. And here's a properly retro feature, a pump peg. External cable routing for brake and gear cables. That's going to make the build fairly easy, I think. Now, I did try and remove this fork just to assess the condition of everything. And what I discovered is, I think it's got a steel steer tube, and it's all kind of corroded into the quill stem. I had a good old go at removing this stem. Used lots of penetrating oil, wrenched it, freed up the bolt, etc. It wouldn't budge. I think it's really heavily corroded into the inside of the steel fork steer tube. I mean, alloy and steel does corrode together, and it's had maybe 20 years to settle into that position. I'm just going to leave it for now. If it turns out to be a problem later, I can come back to it. BSA threaded bottom bracket. Now, whereas I couldn't shift the quill stem after the fork steer, I got the bottom bracket, sealed bottom bracket, out of this quite easily, and it still seems smooth, so I can replace that and we're good. Shimano sealed bottom bracket for square taper chain sets. Quite heavy, but still functions okay. The bearings turn nicely. Now, a few components came with this frame. Most notably is a pair of Shimano RSX STI. These are early STI levers, and they're 7-speed. Shimano RSX rear derailleur and front derailleur, 7-speed. And an RSX double chain set for square taper with non-matching left-hand crank. Now, on closer inspection, the outer train ring on this chain set not in good condition. Some of the chainring teeth really badly worn, plus the whole thing is covered in kind of random drillings. Didn't like this, so I've replaced it. So now it has a nice new Strung-Lite 48 tooth outer chainring. The inner chainring was okay. It's made of steel, so it's not really noticeably worn, so we'll stick with that. However, I hit a roadblock on the road to Retro Nirvana, and it was the left-hand STI shifter. Whereas the right-hand shifter still seems to function perfectly with clicking up and down, the left-hand shifter very much does not. So the internet says a clean and lubricate normally fixes an RSX left-hand shifter, and I've tried that, but it doesn't. It's still really not working at all. By the time I discovered that the left STI was kaput, I had already bought a 7-speed cassette and matching chain, so I was kind of thinking I would like to stick to 7-speed to avoid throwing these things away. Not super expensive, but we don't like to waste money, right? So, faced with a need to replace a 7-speed gear set with something new, where does one go? And my answer was AliExpress, and dug around in there and bought something. So what's in the box? And here we have something from L-Twoo. And this is a kind of ergo shifter marked R2, and this shifts 7-speed. So there's a brake lever, click for going to bigger sprockets in the back, a little thumb shifter for going back down the block. And yeah, the shape is very reminiscent of that from another manufacturer. So that was the right hand shifter. Here's the rear derailleur. Kind of modern looking. Fairly long cage. It's not marked 7-speed or anything, so I guess this will shift across a range of speeds depending on the shifter used. I guess the geometry is all the same. And we also have left-hand front ergo and a band-on front mechanism. So here we are with an L-Twoo R2 7-speed ergo shifters and front and rear derailleurs. Now I said that the shape of the R2 ergos reminded me of something, and here it is. So on the left is the new L-Twoo R2 7-speed ergo, and on the right is a older Athena, Campanello Athena rim brake right-hand ergo. Here they are seen from the inside. The L-Twoo thumb shifter sits up here. The Campanello one sits down here. So a slight difference in the position of the thumb shifter, but otherwise it's basically the same shift paradigm. Seen from the front, the resemblance is striking. Well, I love Campanello as a brand, and I've got a couple of Campanello equipped bikes which I like very much, but Campi is not making a 7-speed ergo shifter, and everything they do make is like way more expensive than anything L-Twoo makes. And as I said, I'm doing a build on a budget, so here we are. There we go, the derailleur's mounted. The attachment screw doesn't need to be stupid tight, just firmly tightened. There we go. Now some of these old bottom brackets had a hollow axle. You could put a wheel quick release right through and clamp this splined tool into place really firmly. But this rather heavier one doesn't have that, so I just have to try and not trash the plastic spline in the right hand cup. Okay, we're good. think that'll do for now. Let's do the right hand side. Now, looking closely at the frame, I've just noticed these two bolts. I guess originally there was a screw-in front mech hanger for this frame, but that's been lost in the mists of time. The RSX front derailleur, which we're not using, was a band-on mechanism, and the L-Twoo front derailleur I've got to replace it is also a band-on mechanism, so let's install that. And there we go, all ready to be wired up. Let's just tighten this approximately in position. That's a bit high up. I must say the rubber hoods in these L-Twoo levers are very well fitting. I've prepared 2 lengths of gear outer casing to go from the ergo down to the frame cable stop. So let's put these on. I've threaded the gear cable all the way through, and I've created a short section of gear cable outer for the rear cable loop from the frame stop to the rear derailleur. Before I connect up the derailleur, I've adjusted the outer limit screw in the rear derailleur such that the top sprocket wheel lines up with the top sprocket in the cassette. Now, first of all, I'll just make sure that the gear cable is fully extended, so I'll give it a few clicks up the way and then let it all the way out. Okay. There's a little notch here that the gear cable has to run along. So I turn the adjustment dial on the rear derailleur, and I feel the slack going out to the derailleur cable, so let's give this a click. Okay, that looks good. 3, 4, 5, 6. Similarly to the rear derailleur, I have attached the front derailleur cable. See it routed up from underneath the bottom bracket and clamped onto the arm here. There's a little groove in this arm for the cable to sit in. And I put some tension on it, and if I operate the left front ergo, it should work. Okay, that will do until we put the chain on and can set up the indexing properly. The brake cable is generic spiral wound cable outer, which I bought from a local bike shop. And on this frame it's continuous from ergo to brake caliper, so let's see if we can get that into place. This is the Shimano HG40 Quick Link. I can't tell you how much I hate this Quick Link. You have to bend the chain to install it. I've done one of these before successfully, so I must be able to do this. got it, I think. I've done a preliminary setup of the gearing. I had to be careful to set the lower limit screw because there was quite a lot of space here since it's only a 7-speed block on what could take, well, 12 speed I guess. And the outer limit screw as well. So let's give that a whirl. So that's nice positive shifting on the rear derailleur. Let's have a look at the front shift. It was a little bit trickier to set up. Like Campag, it's got a trim function. A little bit clunky, but it's working well enough. So, build complete, finally getting to ride this thing. And a very quiet bike it is. Very quite responsive to the pedals. Smooth sort of supple ride. A very nice bike. The gears are very easy to use. The rear shift is responsive. So is the front shift, so there's nothing to complain about there. The lovely Dura-Ace C24 wheels give a nice light feeling to the bike, which is very enjoyable. The only real complaint I have about the bike is that I wish I could have discovered that the headset was not in great condition. It's a little bit notched, so the steering could be better. However, to fix that, I would need to destroy the quill stem and rebuild the front end. Well, I've got to say, that's quite tempting. These L-Twoo levers are really very nice to use. The only thing I'm really not so pleased about is the position of the thumb shifter, which is not the same as Campag. It requires a bit of a stretch of the thumb to use. But, you know, for the price, they're brilliant really, and the kind of gear shifting is impeccable. Nice Campagnolo gear cable. Old style SGI cable stop here with a little thing to adjust on the fly. To be honest, I'm not expecting we'll need to use that at all. The gears are fine as they are. I ended up routing the rear brake around the other side of the head tube. That lets it keep away normally from touching the head tube, so it won't rub and chip away to the paint. If I was keeping this bike, I would for sure get that quill stem out of this fork steer somehow. Probably would mean destroying it. But it would be worth it, I think, to get replace the headset and get an either stem. This saddle is not exactly matching, but it's comfortable enough and came with the bike. The seat pin is an old style alloy with a single bolt. Nice sturdy 6mm Allen key bolt. You can wrench that tight and it holds the seat in place really nicely. And as I said already, the kind of seat cluster on the frame is lovely. Single 5mm Allen key to fasten, and it holds that seat pin really securely with not a lot of effort on the bolt. Nice bit of manufacture there, Giant. The front shifting's really good actually, it's very snappy. Chain shifts up onto that strong light chainring very easily. Here's the rear derailleur. It's got lovely shifting actually, it just really works very nicely. Though I suppose only having to shift across 7 speeds at the back is helpful. This is a sort of early carbon wheel from Dura-Ace with typical Shimano careful engineering, like You can have a carbon wheel, okay, if that's what you really want, but we're going to bond an aluminium rim on it so that the brakes work. It's for your own good. There's graphene in these tyres, whatever graphene is. The brake calipers are generic dual pivot, not sure of the make. Could be anyone's, possibly Tektro. They work pretty well. The pads were a bit glazed, they had been used before, but I sanded the pads down to create new surface and dug out some bits of alloyed old wheel rim that were stuck in there, so the braking's okay with those. The purple handlebar tape's a bit bright, but I thought it basically suited the base colour of the frame. So the weight, not including pedals, it's coming at 8.9 kilos. So really it's almost too nice to go for a commuting bike, but on the other hand it wasn't being used at all. Now it's going to be used, so I hope my son enjoys it very much. I've enjoyed riding it in the little test rides I've had. It's a lovely bike, and the build is coming quite cheaply, so I think he's going to be pretty happy with it.